Welcome back to Basic. We're on the eye of Basic Imitation, following the way of Jesus and really trying to figure out as Christians, how do we behave in the world? What is the difference that being a Christian makes? I think that's a question a lot of people ask is, so you're a Christian, how are you any different than just another good person who doesn't believe in Jesus? And today we want to talk about Christian decision making, kind of that in all of the decisions and controversies and crossroads we come to, what are the Christian filters that we work through to help us make Christian decisions, to help us imitate Christ in everyday circumstances? So, probably we want to just share some actual stories of crossroads that we've come to and the decisions that we make. And so I'll let Pastor Michaela go first on sharing maybe a story when you had to do some work and say, what is the Christian path forward here?
Yeah. So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about how we were having our big annual Easter egg hunt where we have like 2,000 eggs out on our front lawn. We get at least 200 kids that come. And so I was just thinking about, okay, we have this all, we're getting it ready and we're setting it all up. And what we find as we arrive to church to get this ready is a homeless man sleeping on the front part of our church. Now, most people would say, get off our lawn, right?
Get off my lawn.
Get off my lawn. And instead we said, the Easter egg hunt doesn't start for another hour. How about you come in? We just made coffee. You can have coffee. We have donut holes for our volunteers. You're welcome to some donut holes too. And like, he was so grateful. He's like, usually I just get pushed off. No one talks to me. No one treats me like a human. But here you are letting me come into the warmth, because it was a fairly cold spring day, come into the warmth, have coffee, have food. And it's like, yeah, of course. And I ended up having a little chat with him. He told me, I was like, how long have you lived in town? And he told me that he had actually moved here to be with his son, but now he's estranged with his son. And so I even had like a little pastoral care
story,
conversation with him, but just gently also reminded him, we do have quite a few children and families that are going to be showing up here in the next half an hour. Like, if you could go, you're still welcome to take as much as you want to go with you, but we do need you to leave property, right? And so we were holding the safety of our children from this person that we don't know. We have not background checked. Like, that's our policy at the church, is to make sure that adults are background checked for these kind of things. And so we're holding the safety and security of our families while still treating this person like a person, not just a homeless man on our property.
Right. And if you weren't a Christian, how do you think your decisions might have been different? Like, if you didn't have that filter.
I probably wouldn't talk to him. I would just call the police and say, there's a homeless man on my property. Come talk to him and pick him up.
Yeah.
I would not engage him at all.
Right. And the way of Jesus, as we've kind of been talking about through this imitation, is to see people as people made in the image of God, to walk towards uncomfortable situations rather than away from them. Walk towards even someone who's other, or someone who might be an enemy, like, or even, enter into someone's suffering. Like, all of those are like Christian filters that help make those kind of decisions. And there's also, I think, another filter that I work through is in following Jesus is his care for the vulnerable, right? Like, Jesus was always worried about the person who's isolated from society, the person who's been pushed out, the leper on the outside of the wall, or the demon-possessed man chained in the graveyard, or children who are being kept out from his presence, or women who are normally not allowed to sit at his feet, right? Like, Jesus cares about the minority, cares about the poor, cares about the oppressed. And so when we're making decisions, I think part of following Jesus is thinking, who are the powerless, who are the oppressed, who are the vulnerable in this situation, and how can I act on their behalf or care for them? And in the Easter egg situation, you've got two vulnerable populations. You got the homeless man, who may be vulnerable, could be a threat. You also have the kids, and desire to protect the kids and make sure that they're safe. And so I think you did exactly what Jesus would want you to do in trying to navigate both of those. Or, respond appropriately to the man who's homeless, and also make sure that the children are protected. And One situation I was thinking about is when the COVID pandemic came. We had we have this big production called Gallery of Living Art, happens every Lent, and we have, you know, more than 1,000 people will come to 4 different showings over the course of a weekend for this production that our congregation works for months. The choir and volunteers, I mean, hundreds of people from our congregation work together to put this thing on. We got the word that like the NBA was shutting down, the churches were closing on the Thursday before our weekend of COVID, of Gallery of Living Art. And I was faced with the decision, what's the Christian thing to do here? Should I cancel Gallery of Living Art or just press on, right? And so like that's a tough one, and even still it's controversial. Some people would disagree with the decision I made. I made the decision to shut down and cancel all of that, knowing it was going to hurt the people who had put a lot of time and energy into creating this. But the decision was based on, well, and some of the filters I used was, this isn't just a Pastor Trappist decision, right? Like I made this decision in community. So I'm in conversation with Deacon Joan and Eric, our at that time were in charge of the program, and other leaders and other staff members. And then I'm talking to other pastors around the country too about the decisions they're making. We're discerning together that we believe that part of how God helps us make decisions is through the Holy Spirit working in community as we discern what God wants us to do in difficult situations. And then, you know, the other filter was protect the vulnerable, right? That people were dying from COVID. This was before we knew much about it. And we had actually already, maybe not at that time, but we had eventually had someone die of COVID in our congregation. I think it was the second person in the state who died of COVID was a member of our congregation. And so this was a big threat, and so we decided to shut it down. I think probably saved lives. We'll never know. But there were consequences to that, you know, trying to follow Jesus and do the right thing, even when you don't know everything.
Right.
You know, people disagreed. Some people left the church. That kind of thing happened. But it's like trying to do the right thing is always going through the Jesus filter. Right?
Yeah.
We were just talking about another story in our congregation. We have a beautiful house. It's got all this candy, and we do a lot of catering and events, and so there's all this food in the fridge. And we had a security system, and we found out that there was a man who had been coming in and stealing food from the fridge, wine from, you know, the house, candy and all this, and printed out the picture and showed it to the staff, and if you see this guy, you know, and we were trying to decide what to do.
Right. What do we do?
Yeah. So what do you think the Christian thing to do in that situation is? What are the filters?
Right. Well, and that's what we discussed as we sat in the staff meeting. Like, what do we do if we see him? And it was kind of discussed, like, don't engage him, right? Which is what I didn't do at Easter egg hunt. I did engage this person, but we were told to not engage, just call the police, tell our business manager, and so to just like let them know, because we don't know anything about this guy.
And so we told, he was part of AA, we found out. And so we went to the leader and told them about the situation. And then we had decided internally, like, if we see this person on camera again doing this, we're calling the police. You know, we're going to turn him in.
This was not a first offense. This was a multiple offense thing.
Several months that we had just discovered.
Yeah.
But then we kind of made that decision, and then come to find out that this is a person who has low IQ, some mental health issues, didn't know what they were doing was wrong.
Yeah.
And when we found out, I was just like, oh, I feel so bad that I had, like, the things I had said about him, like,
right, we just
jumped
to judgment.
How dare you do this? Like, stealing from the church, you might go to hell for that if you steal from the church. Like, these are things I thought and said, and then I didn't follow Jesus in actually doing the work and finding out more about this person and seeing them first in the image of God. And so made a mistake in that. I mean, luckily there's no big consequences to it, but I certainly didn't treat them the way Jesus would have me treat them. And it's hard. It's hard to be disciplined in following the way of Jesus and seeing people first, not rushing to judgment, getting more information, walking towards them instead of othering them in some way.
And then come to find out that he was acting even more Jesus than us, because he was giving away the food and the candy that he was taking.
Right. He wasn't stealing in his mind. He was sharing food that he had found with homeless folks in the area. So it's just a reminder to us that this way of Jesus is tricky and requires discipline. And we're always going to run into situations where we can't. There's kind of the big categories of Christian behavior, but then whenever there's controversy, whenever you face a crossroads, what are the Christian kind of algorithm you go through, the decision tree, in order to decide what would Jesus do in this situation. And sometimes it probably is to press charges and make sure the person comes to justice so that they are not a harm to society, don't hurt other people. Like, there are definitely times where that's the Christian thing to do. And other times it's to forgive and give mercy, and other times it's to get more information, and sometimes it's get your community of people together and decide as a church that's the way Jesus would have us go.
Right. And it's difficult because Jesus didn't live in the modern age that we have today. And so, I find myself making these Christian decision makings every single time we have an election, right? New things come up. Will I vote for or against abortion rights? Will I vote for or against immigration policies? Will I who will I put into office? Who will I decide is a good policymaker or not? Jesus never had to vote, right? Jesus is living in an occupied territory. The hardest question he got was, do I pay my taxes? The disciples are asking him, okay, now that we're following you, you're the Messiah. Does that mean I don't have to pay my taxes anymore? And he's like, no, you still need to pay taxes. Right. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, right? And so when we have these big things that sometimes come, it sometimes does feel like it's out of our hands, but it's also you put it in Jesus's hands, and you do have to kind of use a very loose framework that you can adapt. Ones that, am I looking towards the vulnerable, and who's the vulnerable? In an abortion case, is the vulnerable the fetus, the unborn, or is the vulnerable the mother? How do you decide something like that?
And things that are controversial for a reason,
right?
Because it's not simple, it's not black and white, and when we try to make it black and white, I think that's when we're not following the way of Jesus anymore.
Well, and you can find Christians on both sides of almost every hot topic. Gun rights, it's just all over.
So I think part of that is, I think of the time when someone came up to Jesus and said, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus says, "Why do you call me good?
Yeah.
No one is good except the Father." And I think that's an example of just humility.
Right.
When we face these controversial decisions, and we, especially with who to vote and what policies are right for our country and what policies are Christian and all that we do it with humility. That we say, this is I'm going to do the work. I'm going to look at the 10 Commandments. I'm going to look at the ethic of love. I'm going to look at what Jesus taught, and I'm going to make a decision. Yeah. I'm going to cast my vote, or I'm going to put myself in this camp of beliefs. But I'm also going to recognize I could be wrong.
Right.
And I'm going to stay humble and open to the other side, people who would decide differently, right. And with Christian reason, right? Often it's Christians disagreeing with each other.
Yeah.
This, I think this is Christian, I think this is Christian. And
right.
Both of them have solid reasons, and they're still opposed. And then you go to Martin Luther, who says, sin boldly.
Yeah.
Don't be paralyzed. Make a decision and trust in the grace of God. We do our best. It's not everything's written in the Bible as to what's right and wrong. There's principles that we follow, and new situations come up.
Yeah.
We're in the AI world now.
Right.
All these different ethical questions, we're going to have to decide, what does it look like to follow Jesus in a very new world.
Right. So deciding what to do as a Christian it's not black and white. And I think that's what we're trying to list is sometimes you get it wrong, sometimes you realize it's gray, and sometimes you just have to go forward with a decision and hope that you're doing it with Christ. And if not, that's why we do confession and forgiveness every Sunday.
Yeah, right. And do it, do it together. Come in community, pray, ask for the Spirit to guide you, and then do your best to imitate Christ.